Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgier kind of content, hit that like and subscribe button. Check us out on Patreon if you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter. The link is in the description. A big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for what you do. It's incredible what you guys do for the channel, and we owe you so much, and we're so grateful for you. If you're interested in any ttrpg products for your real life games, dice bags, check out Dice Legion and use the promo code Sinister. With all that out of the way, we're going to jump into this week's video. We're talking about the Half Orc. The Half Orc comes to us from the player's handbook. It's one of the original playable races. This is an incredibly strong martial fighter. A lot of people really love the Half Orc for barbarians, fighters, paladins, rangers, anything that's going to be hitting pretty hard, pretty heavy, anything that has to do a lot of rolling attacks because of some of their subclass abilities. They are a staple in fantasy lore. Everybody loves orcs. If you ever played Warcraft, you know orcs well through and through. The orcs in D&D are a little different than the orcs in World of Warcraft, mainly because they're gray, they're scarier looking, they're meaner, they're not exactly green or brown, but they do have a lot of rich history to dive into if you really want to know where they came from, how they came to exist, their connection to Grommash, and all the great hatred they have for elves, and how deep that river runs. So your base stats are pretty much the same. You have 30-foot walk speed, you're medium size, your alignment. If you lean towards your orcish heritage, your alignment is significantly eviler than if you didn't. You're a half orc, so you can deviate where you want to put yourself for your backstory and how you became an adventurer, and that's a good way to set up your alignment. One of the things I want to touch up on is the importance of how long a species lives. And this is important because it sets a certain tone to how they do things. Orcs live 75 years on average. They have a very aggressive lifestyle. I mean, you know, because they tend to be adventurers. If you're really leaning into your orcish heritage, you're constantly fighting. So that puts a lot of danger into your life cap and probably lowers it a little bit. But having 75 years on average as a half orc, it puts an expedience in what you're doing. There really isn't a lot of time to wait around. You don't have all the time in the world to learn something and become like this for a few years and then do something else. You kind of got to pick your path and just go for it and just run. And orcish culture kind of breeds into that. So depending on what your other half is, which most of the time ends up being human, there's still this very limited amount of years to it, and that affects your perspective. When you're dealing with elves and dwarves and these other species that live past 400 years, they have all the time in the world. How they react to things is different. Their mentality is different, and I encourage you to try and use that as part of your decision-making process when you're playing as one of these species that don't have a long lifespan, because everything you do has to be for a purpose, for a goal. So you have a limited amount of time to get that done, because yeah, you can live up to 75 years, but your prime is over pretty quick. Dark vision. Thanks to your orc blood, you have superior vision in dark and dim conditions. You can see in dim light within 60 feet as if you were in bright light, and in darkness as if you were in dim light. You can't discern colors in darkness, only shades of gray. I talk about darkness and dark vision kind of a lot. One of the main things that I can't help but keep reiterating when I come to dark vision, it's not that you see perfectly clear in darkness. You can see, you can tell there are people dressed in armor, but you can't tell who those people are. If your armor is very similar to the enemy you're fighting and someone else has dark vision, if you're too far from them, they can't really discern that you're not one of them. It's an interesting thing that a lot of times gets left out with dark vision. So a lot of the times, even if you do have dark vision, I imagine a lot of these entities, these species, would be carrying around torches anyway, just because they need to be able to discern friend from foe, unless they know all of their friends are accounted for and they're not expecting any guests. So depending on how you want to DM or how your DM plays with dark vision, there's a lot of different avenues you can go and make it less of a necessity and a more breathable reason as to why you don't need it. But thankfully the Half Orc has it, and you kind of want that because the Half Orc is kind of built towards being a little bit of a frontliner. Menacing. You gain proficiency in the intimidation skill. Now, this is a skill that often goes underutilized. You can use intimidation and not force a fight. You can use it to kind of hold your ground, or at least make this standing that you have certain things that you cannot allow to happen. Sometimes on text, it makes more sense to use intimidation. If you are reckless with your intimidation and you're trying to goad certain types of species, that might fail in your quest, because even though you might succeed on your intimidation check, it might produce a violent outcome that you didn't initially want. Intimidation takes a little bit of brain power behind it to really make it work in your favor. It's not an easy social skill to use, but if you do dip into charisma for any reason, that is something that you might want to really try and figure out incorporating into your character, using that as one of their main attractions, and understand that you can force a lot of great things with intimidation along the same lines as persuasion. You just need to be able to show the force to back it up. You don't need to use the force, you just need to show that you do have the strength to do whatever it is necessary, and that will usually work. In combat, using intimidation is a great way to kind of get someone to surrender or try and stop a fight because you're already winning and you don't want this to continue. Maybe you're bluffing, maybe your party's low on resources and your party's pretty hurt. You might have a chance to succeed in a combat where you shouldn't be in the first place by taking one or two people down and then trying to intimidate other people into leaving. Relentless endurance. When you are reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, you can drop to 1 hit point instead. You can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. This is part of the reason why they're a great frontliner. If things are going sideways, dropping down to 1 is still a better option. One thing I do want to make perfectly clear. Just because you have 1 hit point does not mean you should get right up and start attacking. You will go down again. Depending on how realistic your combat runs with your party might not be able to tell that you're still alive. They might not know. They might not have seen you use this ability. They might not know half orcs have this ability. It's an important thing to note, because you can drop and then gain that 1 HP and play dead. Just don't get up, don't move, try and hide your breathing. Just give a few moments for the enemies to move on and move away so you don't run in there and get knocked down again. It's a little bit more of a tactic used to kind of make yourself live a little longer. Yeah, you can jump right back up and start swinging, but you got put down for a reason. Maybe jumping right back into it isn't the best object. Maybe you wait till like a backup or an off tank or someone that can hold themselves for a little bit starts dragging the attention of whatever took you down, and then wait a round or two and then just run in there and attack. It's a better use because you're less likely to be dropped immediately than if you just went down and then jumped back up again. It's gonna sacrifice a few moments, but a few rounds, so maybe you can get more rounds later of staying up without burning a multitude of spell slots to keep you in the fight, might be better choice and a better decision. Savage attacks. When you score a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you can roll one of the weapon's damage dice one additional time and add it to the extra damage of the critical hit. This is why you see so many barbarians, paladins, and fighters and rangers that are half orcs. The extra critical damage, you're going to be constantly attacking, and there's a bunch of ways to gain that advantage and to increase your critical range. Champion fighters is fantastic for half orcs. It's just such a great thing. When you get brutal critical with your barbarians, this adds on to that. So your crits end up going so far with their damage, and this is what makes them a front liner. It really makes you want to just charge in and be this menace on the field. So it really screams towards that dual wield, the two-handed weapon, running in, going nuts, barbarian-like character. It's really meant for that ideal. You don't have to be that mindless about it. And being a half orc, you're not restricted to being unintelligent. So what you can do is be a paladin, be a fighter, be an eldritch knight, be whatever it is you want, and just know that you still have that savagery pumping in your blood. So when you crit harder than anyone else. Our final thoughts. Full disclosure, we have fallen in love with one half orc, and Marcus will be forever remembered. But that character is a perfect example of how easy it is for a half orc to play true to itself and its nature, and just be this incredibly charismatic character. A lot of the times when I encounter half orcs, I absolutely end up really favoring them, just because A, I love the orcs in Warcraft, and I have for a long time, and B, a lot of the times they're just so aggressive and ready to take on whatever it is, and it's a very attractive thing to have someone that confident and that willing to fight whatever it is, and really carry those orcish traits, and really push that forward, and while still dealing with the duality of who their character is, and then the influences from their non-orcish side. It's so easy, so relatable to deal with someone really from the duality of their own life, and I think it really sets the ground for an incredible character that's really very strong for a lot of things, and it's just so set up to be that hero wielding that sword that just jumps off the mountain and takes that final swing to beat the boss. Like that is the personification of what a half orc is. That perfect bravery and fantasy heroicism that really draws you to this kind of genre in the first place. So it's something that I really enjoy. I hope everyone has played one by now, and if you haven't, you should really take the time to do so. They're a lot of fun, and it's a great barbarian if you're thinking about playing a barbarian, because that brutal critical is going to feel so good. That being said, we're going to bring this video to a close. Big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love what you guys do. Thank you so much. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description. Another big thank you to our good friends at Dice Legion. Again, that promo code is Sinister, and use that to get 10% off all of your purchases. With all that said and done, thank you all for giving the Spooky Kid a chance.